Hi and welcome to another chat with the ladies from Carter Ferguson. I've got Catherine and Deb. Thanks for coming in today, ladies. And today we're going to talk about selling your home. So you've thought about putting your home on the market. What are some of the first things they should do, Deb?
Well, I guess the first thing that you need to think about is who's going to sell your property. So coming and talking to Monique McGrath will probably be a good idea if you're looking at who should sell the property, and you need to be comfortable with the agent. Once you've made a decision about that, you really need to start to think about getting your documents together, because you'll need a contract of sale before you're able to put the property on the market. So before your agent can start getting the photos up on the web and showing people through, the law requires them to have a marketing contract, and that means that you need to have a think about who's going to do that for you. You'll need to think about who your solicitors and conveyancers are, because they'll prepare that contract for you. So there are various disclosures that you need to make within that contract and documents that need to be attached that are required by the law. So putting all the information about your property together so that when you come to see your solicitor or conveyancer about getting that contract ready, we've got all the information that we need about what we're going to be putting into that contract. So issues with disclosure which people don't necessarily think about are, do you have any improvements on your property that haven't been done with council approval? And some people may or may not be sure of that. So if there is anything unknown, it's possible that we can get an authority, or you or yourself, or we can go for you and have a look at your council file and just have a look at what's in there, so we can be sure that what it is that's standing on your property also matches what the council has in their council file. So you can have access to that file easily yourself and go and have a look, or if you want us to do that for you, you can sign off on an authority and we can go and do that on your behalf. But actually understanding what it is that you've got to sell is important. And so any issues that you have with your property, things that may be important to someone, if you're in negotiations with the government about a footpath or an acquisition, or you've been given a notice that it may be that there's going to be a highway built behind you, or anything like that, things that we should be disclosing in a contract, or at least have knowledge about, so that we're putting it out there about what it is that you're selling.
And it's not a big deal, well, it can be, but what we're saying is when we talk about disclosures, often we'll go and see somebody to appraise their home, and they'll say my deck isn't approved or the back room hasn't been approved. That's fine, but when you're talking to your solicitors or conveyancers, please disclose that entirely, because there's always a simple solution to have it fixed. But could you just explain that scenario we talked about that just become bigger than Ben Hur that didn't need to?
Yeah, we had a client who, we give you a questionnaire. So if you come to us to prepare a contract, we'll give you a questionnaire where we ask you a lot of questions about the property so that we can get information from you and provide you with advice. So just because you tell us something doesn't mean we tell everybody else either. It just means that we have the information that we need to provide you with advice and give you options on how we can manage things that may crop up in the process of a sale. So we had a client who we sent a questionnaire to, and one of the questions was, is there anything that you've done without approval? To which our client answered that he had converted a carport to a garage. I explained his options were that we could just simply disclose this in the contract, or we could call the council to have that regularised by way of applying for a building certificate. If he was going to go down that path, it would mean that we would be inviting council into his home, and so anything else that was there that hadn't been approved would become apparent to council. So was he really sure that he wanted to go down that path? He said, yes, I want this fixed, I want this sorted, I want to make sure I get top dollar for my property, so I don't want any problems cropping up that may mean that I'm now negotiating down the price. Applied for a building certificate. When council went out there, it became apparent and we became aware of, he'd actually put in an application to convert his carport to a garage, also put on a deck, also do dual occupancy downstairs and close off walls that weren't being closed. So consequently, when council went out there, he already knew that that development consent didn't get approved, so council had actually already knocked it back. And so all of which we didn't know. So consequently, when council went out there was a Pandora's box of issues that now became very ugly, and we had to go and get Section 96 amendments and get a planner on board, and it ended up costing quite a lot of money to regularise the issues that he had with his property, and it also impacted on the negotiation about the price. So it would have been better if he had just told us everything, then we could have made a decision about how we were going to manage it. before the property was on the market on the web, and we're having to now share all of this drama with the purchaser.
And look, that's not to frighten you either, because if you actually make the disclosures and you choose to actually just let everybody know, 9 times out of 10, the improvements that you've made to the property, people want.
They want to keep
So
them. They want to
just
keep
want
them.
to proceed, but it's like, making sure everybody knows so that there isn't anything to negotiate at the end. So I think that's a good one.
Yeah, forewarned is
Just
forearmed. Yeah.
Could you talk about the certificate of title?
Sure. So the certificate of title is the legal document that allows you to convey your property. You may not, a lot of people may not have ever seen them, because if you've got a mortgage, the bank, it's like now you see it, now you don't. So you don't see it for a very long period of time. The bank hold it as security. So one of the first other questions we have in our questionnaire is, do you know the location of your title deed? Because we can't complete the settlement without being able to hand over the title deed. So often people will leave them with a solicitor. If you've got a mortgage, it's more likely to be with the bank. Where we have missing title deeds, it's often where we have older clients who have had possession of them and can't exactly remember what they've done with them, and they may have thought it was in a security deposit with their bank, but it's not there. So keeping a track of your title deed, so it's always a good idea to leave your title deed with your solicitor or in a safety deposit with your bank, preferably not just hanging around in paperwork that you may move through your life, because it's easy for it to fall off. And the other issue that often comes with that is where we look at the title, it will still show a mortgage, and therefore the title deed is actually with the bank, whereas the clients are of the view that the loan was paid off quite a long time ago. And so people don't understand that, yes, you can pay a loan off, but unless you request the bank to discharge the mortgage, it still stays on the title, and the bank will still have possession of your title deed. The other thing that often happens is that people have picked up their title deeds and the bank supplies them with a discharge, but doesn't actually tell them that it needs to be registered with land titles. So people will come in with the title with an old discharge, which we then need to send to land titles to clear the title, and they didn't realise that the whole time the bank still was technically held as security over their property.
Even though they haven't had a mortgage for years.
Yeah, and I mean that's just something that delays a settlement going forward. So if we can't find the title deed, it's better to know that right at the beginning so we can put an application for a new one. Because otherwise, if it comes up during the course of it all, then and people sometimes say, "Oh yeah, I know where that is. It's there." Are you really sure? So go and check if you think it's there, because that happens sometimes. No, it's with the bank. And actually now it's not with the bank, and we're applying for a new title deed, which can take up to a month to 6 weeks.
And with the way how fast property's selling, you don't want to be
No, and you don't want to be delaying the settlement either, because often that causes a whole chain reaction of drama, and if you're waiting on the money to complete a purchase, we've now got a domino effect.
There is another thing, just quickly, swimming pools and spa, new regulation or legislation that come into play this year. Could you just quickly talk about that? So this, if you have a swimming pool or a spa, Catherine will just tell us a little bit about that.
If you have a swimming pool, majority of times you've gone to council to put in your development application, regardless of how old the swimming pool is, to have a swimming pool put in your backyard. The recent changes to the swimming pool legislation means that you have to register your swimming pool and provide a compliance certificate. So if your swimming pool is more than 3 years old, you'll need a compliance certificate. If you have put it in the last 3 years, chances are you'll have a final occupation certificate to go with it. So there is new legislation in relation to regularising swimming pools to ensure that they comply, given the drownings that we have. The state government have taken it very seriously to try and minimise, if not eliminate, those situations.
So going back to your point about getting a final occupation certificate or an occupation certificate on a pool, it's really important you complete that process at the time that you get the pool. A lot of people don't go back to their private, that often happens with the private certifier. They don't get the private certifier to come back out and go, yes, that's been ticked. And so consequently we had a client down in our office who had done everything in accordance with the regulations at the time the pool was built. They hadn't gone and got the occupation certificate, and the law had actually changed in the between time. So then there was an issue about whether the walls were or weren't high enough, because now they're not.
Mm.
Before they were, but now they're not. So we managed to work with a planner to sort that out too. But they're issues you don't really want to have to face.
Not no.
If you don't have to.
Absolutely. So I guess the thing we're talking about here is making sure you seek good professional advice. And if you don't have a conveyancer or a solicitor, I strongly suggest you speak to the ladies at Carter Ferguson. And thanks for spending time with me today, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.